Hey everybody, Papa Wiggs here with Wiggs. We're going to do a quick recap of week 3. So let's jump right into it. The first game that we're going to talk about on Sunday is the Giants and the Browns. I think the biggest thing in this game is the Giants won, right, Wiggs? And then uh, the the noteworthy thing here is Neighbors had a big game. It was nice to see Neighbors be targeted like he was. They got him the ball. It got results, and obviously the Browns have some stuff to work on defense. But I think the Giants are slowly figuring it out.
Yeah, I think Daniel Jones realized getting the ball to Malik Neighbors was something he needs to do throughout the year, and I think if he continues to do that, especially when they get in the red zone for touchdowns, I think they're going to find a lot of success this year, which is something I would not have said coming into the year, but I think you find Neighbors the ball and you're going to have success. The Browns, I don't know, their offense stinks right now. Don't get me wrong, Cooper had 2 touchdowns, but they don't look that great.
Yeah, they need to figure it out. The next game here is the Eagles versus the Saints. This one was a little bit surprising to me in the fact that the Eagles' defense is okay, but I thought the Saints would have had a little bit more success, but the Eagles had a good game plan to limit Kamara, which I think helped them out. I think obviously we talked about the Swigs. They needed Barkley to have a big game,
And Goddard.
yeah, and Goddard, and they both had big
Yep.
games, and we called that one. So that's what they needed to do to win, and they did that. And look at they won.
Yep. And like you said in our video going into the week, Goddard had to step up and have a big game, and he did that. 170 yards on 10 receptions yesterday was nuts. And like you pointed out, the Eagles really limited Kamara in that offense, and they pulled out a win. You limit Kamara, and really that's all you need to do to beat this Saints offense because Derek Carr's not going to be able to do it himself. So
And for you Olave owners out there, I'm sure you're happy because he actually had a game. So, but you're going to have the struggles of owning Olave throughout the year.
yeah,
The next game, Texans versus Vikings. Listen, I'm a Vikings fan. I'm still not sold. Sorry, Wigs. Um, yeah, they played really well. Their defense looked really, really, really good. Uh, I'm just not sold still. I need to see more, from their offense. I think Aaron Jones had a big game, and I think we talked about that. They
yep.
needed him to do that, which he did. And the Texans needed Cam Akers to have a big game, and he didn't. So, and that's not necessarily on him, but he didn't have a big game, which made them kind of one dimensional. And Nico Collins was okay. Diggs was okay. The Vikings defense just had a really good game plan, and the Texans just couldn't figure it out. So,
Yeah, the Vikings came in wanting that win, and they showed it on defense. They were down Ivan Pace Jr. and Dallas Turner in that game, and they still pulled out a win. I think they also had Becky Blackman out as well, but um, I don't know. They looked pretty decent in this game. Definitely a big hit not having Mixon on the field there for the Texans because I think Mixon opens up the field for Nico Collins a little bit more, and Gilmore locked down Collins yesterday. So it was nice to see the Vikings win. I only picked them due to them never losing to the Texans. They were 5-0 going into that game. They ended 6-0, and they kind of took it to a team that was highly thought of going into this week.
yeah, and listen, one last thing on this for all you Vikings fans out there that are saying I'm a naysayer. Listen, I've been a Vikings fan since I came out of the womb over 50 years, and you know what? I'm not going to be satisfied until they go deep in the playoffs. So I could care less what they do in the regular season. Show me what you're going to do in the playoffs. They haven't done it. So Kevin O'Connell needs to figure it out and stuff. And maybe they do it. I just don't think that's going to happen with Sam Darnold as a quarterback. That's just my opinion. Um, I hope they prove me wrong. So with that, we'll go into the next game: Broncos versus the Buccaneers. This was a big surprise to me. I thought the Buccaneers would have had a little bit more success, especially playing at home. Wigs, but this does show that the Broncos are better team than people think they are. Their defense is really kind of carrying them right now, and they kind of shut down the Buccaneers' offense. Uh, and Bo Nix went out there and played well. They had a decent game, there. So, um,
Yeah, one thing I really want to note is Bo Nix yet again not throwing a touchdown, but I think his running back stepped up a decent amount this week. someone like Tyler Beatty came out
Jeez,
out
I
of
don't even know
nowhere.
where he came
Yeah, I
from.
know, 9 carries for 70 yards. Like that came out of the blue, and I was really shocked when I pulled this up and looked at it. I'm like, there's no way there's someone on this list I don't even know of because I thought it would have been Williams or
Well,
McLaughlin.
and they
But
got another guy that is supposed to be the guy, so he came out of the blue, and then Sutton had a good game. So, and Nick's, he rushed for a touchdown. He had 47 yards rushing. So, the big thing with these rookie quarterbacks is if they don't make mistakes and they're not the reason why the team lost, they give their team a chance to win.
oh yeah, and they feel more confident in the game. Bo Nix, from the highlights I saw, looked pretty good. He still missed a few receivers there in the game, but you're gonna have those growing pains early on as a rookie. So it was nice seeing them come out with the win here early in the season. And I think if you build up Bo Nix's confidence, that's just going to be sky's the limit for him. He's going to be good. They just took out a top 3 team.
I like Nix and I like players on the team. I just can't stand Sean Payton. Yeah. So, anyways, next game, Packers versus the Titans. I don't think there's really any surprise here. The Titans still aren't figuring it out on offense. I would have thought it would have been a little bit more closer given the fact that, the Titans. Oh wait, they were at Packers, weren't they? Were they at Lambeau? Yeah. Or no?
No, they were in.
Oh, okay. So it was in Tennessee. I thought it was at Lambeau for some reason, but maybe that's the way we had it switched. So at any rate, Malik Willis went out, had a good game, and they did what they needed to do to win, right? So Willis didn't make any mistakes. They gave Love another week to get rested, and I'm assuming Love's going to be back next week against the Vikings. So that'll be an interesting game. And what can I say? That Will Levis is not making a case for himself right now. He's making a lot of mistakes that I'm surprised that he's making this year, given it's his second year. So, and they need to figure out their run game because Pollard is not the answer. They need to maybe start thinking about giving Spears the ball more, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm quite impressed by Willis there in the game yesterday. He threw for over 200 yards, and then he was their leading rusher on top of it there at 73 yards. So it was nice to see that from him. And if Will Levis just stops with the stupid turnovers, I think he can be good, but he's just not using his brain fully there out on the field.
Yeah, a little surprising. We'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully they can figure it out. And that leads us into the next game, which, the Bears-Colts, I think we talked about this, Wiggs. It was going to be a good game. I didn't think it was going to be a blowout. And Udunzi, he came out, had 114 yards and a touchdown. I think this was his breakout game. I really do. I think the longer Allen's out, even if Allen comes back, I think Udunzi's making a case for them to get him involved in their offense. I still think that Caleb Williams needs to figure out his completion percentage and getting the ball to his receivers. On the flip side, I think Richardson and the Colts came out and they played well at home and they got the win. It was ugly, but they got the win. And again, I think this is a game where we said Jonathan Taylor had to have a good big game, and Jonathan Taylor did. He had a nice game, 135 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that's exactly what they needed to do to beat the Bears.
Yeah, and I think for both teams, it was kind of an ugly game all around. I'm not sold really on either one of these quarterbacks to this point, but I think they just need to get more comfortable in the offenses and then just slow it down and relax. I don't know. I have no true thoughts here on Williams. Yes, he threw for over 300 and I think 50 yards yesterday, but if you're throwing for 350 yards, you need to be winning the game. Like, there's no reason you should be losing that game.
Just a tough game. So that leads us into the next game, Chargers at Steelers. Listen, Steelers were at home. I felt like the Chargers were going to struggle against that defense. The Steelers defense has probably been, outside of maybe the Vikings defense, the most consistent so far this year, I would say. They're going out, they're balling. Justin Fields is making a case for him to be the starter the whole entire year. I think Russell Wilson's probably sweating a little bit because all he's doing is going out there and winning games. I mean, Calvin Austin was a little bit of a surprise. He had 95 total yards and a touchdown. I would have thought Pickens would have had a bigger game, but he didn't. And again, like we said, Harris and Warren really weren't a factor in this game. I think it was more the fact that Fields didn't make a lot of mistakes, and he led the team to a victory, and their defense did what their defense needed to do and shut down the Chargers' run game.
Yeah, the defense looked really good. They shut down Dobbins, which is what teams haven't been able to do so far this year. And I think that's the reason they won the game. Their defense just came out and played. Nothing against the Chargers. They just couldn't get anything going, really. Something to know from this game, both running backs right now for the Steelers are banged up. Harris apparently is in a sling right now with one of his arms, and then Warren's getting his leg checked out for something. So
Crazy. And next game, Dolphins at Seahawks. Again, I would have thought this would have been closer. I know they got a backup quarterback playing for the Dolphins. I know it was in Seattle. I just think, I don't understand how you don't have your two main receivers more involved and at least adjust the play calling somehow against Seattle to get the ball in their hands more to help out Thompson there. I really thought Thompson was going to have a better game than he did. He didn't. DK Metcalf came out, had a nice game again. JSN didn't really do too much. Charbonnet was okay. Geno Smith did a Geno Smith things. Their defense just played really well. Well, and if you look at their division, they're 3-0. All the other three teams are 1-2.
Yep.
Crazy. Nobody would have. I wouldn't have predicted the Seahawks being.
No, neither would I. I thought they would have been like 1-2 to this point, just with the way their schedule was right away. But they came out and played pretty good. Charbonnet had a pretty good game there yesterday. 2 touchdowns and like 97 yards combined. So he had a pretty solid performance. And aside from that, really, the offense didn't have to do too much. DK, like you said, had a big game with Lockett, and JSN really didn't have to do a whole lot because they weren't really, having to put a lot of points on the board with the Dolphins only scoring 3 points.
Yeah. And then next game, this to me was the biggest surprise: the Panthers versus the Raiders. The Raiders, some of their players, they've got issues right now. Their coach isn't happy. Max Crosby was banged up. He wasn't at 100%, which I think that had something to do with it. I think the Panthers rallied around Andy Dalton there. Deontay Johnson came out, had a nice game. Hubbard had a nice game. I wasn't expecting that. I thought the Raiders' defense would have been pumped up. That was their first home game of the year as well. They came out, they really just kind of they stunk. They looked really bad. Their offense couldn't get anything going. Minshew ended up getting benched and replaced with O'Donnell. Late in the fourth quarter or middle? Yeah, so listen, Andy Dalton's an experienced guy. He's been in the league. He's been a starter. So maybe this is what they need. For your Deontay Johnson owners, if they continue to go with Dalton, you're gonna have to consider putting Deontay in at minimum as a flex because I think that Dalton when he likes a receiver, he gets them the ball. And I think that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, and you and I were looking at stats like the day before the games actually was played, and we were talking about how Andy Dalton kept finding one guy over and over again. And I think Deontay will be this guy. I think it goes to show that realistically, if you put up points on the board, your offensive line isn't like too bad, and your defense can actually play because they're not out on the field a whole lot. And I mean, 36 points from a team that was putting up like a combined like 10 to 15 in the 2 weeks prior, like. That's nuts.
I don't disagree with you. Here's my take, though. I'm still leery on the Panthers' defense because I think the Panthers reversed it on the Raiders this time. The Raiders' defense was out on the field a lot more than the Panthers' defense. The Raiders' defense was banged up. So I think that had something to do with it. If I see the Panthers start playing a little bit more and their defense come into play, then I'll definitely back you up on that. I'm not sold on their defense yet.
Yeah, I think if the Panthers can continue what they did this week on offense, not even just from the scoring standpoint, but staying on the field a lot more than they were in the first few weeks, I definitely could see their defense playing better because those first few weeks their defense was out on the field way more than their offense was, and yesterday probably was a really nice change of pace for their defense because they weren't out on that field as much as weeks prior.
Yeah, and then so the next game, this was the injury-prone game, 49ers against the Rams. Man, I am stunned that the Rams pulled this one off. I thought for sure the 49ers were going to have the edge on this. You know what? Their defense needs to figure it out. They're not playing their greatest ball right now, especially when you're going against the Rams team who really had one playmaker pretty much do everything. In this game, and that was Kyron. I mean, he had 116 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's kind of had the 49ers number though, in the since he's been their running back. So the one nice bonus for the 49ers was Juan Jennings came out, had 175 yards for 3 touchdowns. Doesn't surprise me. Ayuk still had an okay game, but I think we talked about this. Ayuk's going to need a game or two to get his game legs underneath him. So to be able to have Juan Jennings come out and do what he did, that was huge. They just now got to figure out how they can bring together the offense and the defense.
Yeah, and I think Juan Jennings is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league. I easily think he's probably one of the best wide receiver threes, like top three in there. But he came out and played yesterday. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if after this game he was out on the field even more in future weeks, because Brock Purdy does like to throw his way. Even in games prior to this, when it mattered, he liked throwing to him. Last year in the playoffs, he was thrown to a decent amount because Brock Purdy has trust in him, and I think that's a good thing to have from your quarterback. If he likes throwing you the ball, it goes to show he'll get you the ball, and he caught it 10 times yesterday for 175 yards.
Yeah, no, so that was a good one. And next game, Lions versus Cardinals. Listen, Wiggs got this one right. He picked the Lions. I picked the Cardinals. But I think I also said in our last, in our matchup video that the Lions just need to figure out how to close out a game, and they did.
Yep.
Their running backs, both their running backs had decent games.
Yep.
Gibbs and Montgomery. St. Brown had a decent game. Williams was okay. Laporta got hurt, so I think you got to keep an eye on that.
Their backup tight end did pretty good yesterday, though, when he was in the
game. Did he? So, so Brock Wright came in, had 4 receptions for 34 yards. Williams, I guess he only had 1 reception for 9 yards. But they really didn't need him because, man, Montgomery and Gibbs, between the two of them, they had over 200 yards worth of offense, just between the two of those guys. So the Lions really didn't need it. On the flip side, the Cardinals, I was surprised. I thought they would have had a little bit more success. Harrison came back down to earth. He still had a touchdown, but he only had 5 receptions for 64 yards. It's nice seeing Michael Wilson get involved, and James Conner did not do what James Conner needed to do. He needed to have a decent game for them. It's pretty bad when your quarterback's the leading rusher. It's never good. I mean, you should only see that on the Ravens.
Or the Commanders.
Yeah, and the Ravens, you're not even seeing that because Henry's coming out, which leads us into that game, the Ravens versus the Cowboys. Listen, we both got this one right. I know the score was 28-25, but it was not a close game. The Cowboys didn't start rallying until the fourth quarter, and that was desperation rally, and because I think they all knew they were going to have to face Jerry Jones after the game. Yeah. So Derrick Henry went off, had a big game in this one, which was good to see. He had 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's what they do. They run the ball. So, but the Cowboys, they're just disappointing to me. And this is going to be another Cowboys year. And listen, they keep losing. Mike McCarthy's going to be fired. He's going to be fired, or Zimmer's going to be fired. Somebody on that coaching staff is going to be fired before the year is done. Guarantee it.
Yeah, the Ravens came out and played. I know Lamar Jackson wasn't happy about the play calling in the fourth quarter. He felt like the coaches were just letting off the gas. He basically told them on the sideline at one point, we should not be letting off the gas, and we should continue to play the way we were playing. And he thinks their little comeback there, from what I heard in the post-game interview, is just due to the fact that they let off the gas and didn't do what they were doing. So,
but they still got the win.
They got the win, yeah.
And maybe they learned from that, right, Wiggs?
Yep. I think it's one of those situations where it's like, no lead is safe. Just stay doing what you're doing. I hate when teams do that.
Well, look at the Vikings coming back against the Colts 2 years ago.
Yeah, so you need to just stay on the gas the entire time. It was like the Dolphins last year when they kept going at it with the Broncos and won by over 50 points. Stay on the gas,
Yeah, no, I agree. And then the last game, I'm sorry, listen. The Chiefs versus the Falcons, this, to me, just exemplifies why the NFL needs full-time officials in this league. The officials blew that Kyle Pitts call in the end zone. That was obvious pass interference. Don't get me wrong. The Falcons did everything they could to lose this game. But we shouldn't have to see these continued calls, and it wasn't just in this game. There was multiple games again this week where the NFL officials blew the calls badly. Not close calls. They were badly blowing calls. And listen, they interviewed the officials after this game, one of the officials, and what did they say? They said, well, we weren't in position to see that. That is bull. They got a guy on the back of the end zone. They got two guys on the goal line. They had views of that. Okay, this just comes back to me what I've said before, and I'll say it again. The Chiefs are the new Patriots of the NFL. They're getting the NFL knows that there's more money in having the Chiefs go back to the Super Bowl and repeat for a third time than there is if somebody else goes in there. And if you don't believe that Vegas and the betting and all that doesn't have something to do with this, and that the NFL doesn't have something to do with this, I'm telling you, I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy person here, but they've got to figure this out. People, you know what? When you got guys like Tony Dungy that are coming out and talking about the officials and needing full-time officials and stuff like that to so that you can keep them accountable, so that you can always have the officials on the same page and stuff, it's bad. And their crews, you go from crew to crew to crew, and each crew calls the games different, and it shouldn't be like that.
In my opinion, like, I agree with you completely with the pass interference call. I think there needs to be something implemented in the NFL rules where when it comes down to those clutch moments at the end of the game, coaches should be able to at least challenge something like that, especially when it's obvious, and make it go to New York and have them review it there. Not just the refs, have it go above them and have the NFL review it on the spot, because that was a clear penalty yesterday. The same thing happened the week before against the Bengals. Something needs to be implemented where these coaches have the ability to have it looked at, because that was a clear pass interference. And like you said, there was a ref right there at the back of the end zone who could clearly see that the Chiefs D-back did not have his head turned around and literally just ran into Pitts way before he even got the ball.
Now, with that said, now that we went on our rant, okay, Rashee Rice looked really good for Kansas City. I think they found their guy at receiver now. I really do. He looked really good. Travis Kelce's not looking good. He's too focused on his TV shows and his girlfriend. Again, I said that at the beginning of the year, and I'm standing by it. On the flip side, what in God's green earth was Falcons' offensive coordinator thinking about when they got the ball back after that offensive pass or defensive pass interference wasn't called? They still got the ball back. They're fourth in inches, right? Was like a half a yard, wasn't it, Wig? And what do? They run against a team that's got like 8 guys on the line.
I will say Bijan came out after the game and said Kirk Cousins is the one who changed the play call there on that 4th down.
Well, whether it was Kirk or the offensive coordinator, whoever did it, that was terrible. They should not have been doing that.
They just called a timeout.
They should have. Yes, exactly. The Chiefs called a timeout before that play because it was given to them. The Falcons should have saw what the setup was, and if Cousins didn't like it and stuff, he should have called a timeout, and they should have discussed it. I mean, that was terrible. That was terrible, terrible, terrible. Should have never happened. No, you shouldn't be making plays like that at this level. I mean, that was terrible. They hadn't had success all day really running the ball, and now you're going to try to go off to the side. You're going to try to go out on the edge on 4th and inches. Really?
It's like you said last night. Bring in Michael Penix if you're worried about being hurt, and just have him QB sneak it. It would have been that simple.
Yeah, I mean, you could have had Kirby QB sneak it. I mean, he's got to do it. He's going to have to do it. Yep. You're telling me if you're in the playoffs and you're down at the end zone and you got a half a yard and you need to run a QB sneak that you're not going to let your quarterback run a QB sneak? No, come on. Tom Brady was doing it when he was in his 40s for crying out loud. So anyway, sorry, don't mean to go off on a rant, but that was just an example, one example of multiple games that officials have screwed up major calls again, and the NFL refuses to do anything about it. They say they're going to do stuff about it, but they don't. And you know what? Like I told people, the game I used to love when I was a kid, they're making it harder and harder for me to watch now. which is really sad because I used to love watching football. But when stuff like this happens on a consistent basis, and they don't, it's hard to watch. It shouldn't be like that, right, Wiggs?
No, I agree with you completely.
Well, that's the recap. Again, sorry for the rant there. Got a little worked up, but hey, listen, if stuff's not said, things don't change, right, Wiggs?
Exactly.
So check us out, Fantasy Fools PPR. We're out on Snapchat, X, TikTok, Instagram. Like, share, subscribe. Give us your feedback. If you got any questions or lineup questions, feel free to reach out. I will say, Wiggs, I thought we did, we missed a few things this week in our predictions, but I think we hit a lot of predictions this week too.
New York Giants and the Browns, I got you guys.
And I would have had the Falcons and the Chiefs, man. I'm telling you, I picked the Falcons, and the refs cost me the game. But with that said, we'll see you next time, and have a great night.